Y'all planning for this?
Welcome back, TPR Nation. This is Jamie Shalansky in an episode of Worlds to Conquer. And who wants to have a super uncomfortable conversation? Ask anyone in my family and guarantee I will sign up for that. I absolutely love it. If I meet you in person, chances are I will never remember your name just because I'm not a name person. But if you teach me something, I will learn about whatever that is and remember you forever. So when it comes to poking the bear or pushing buttons or starting fights, I'm probably the go-to gal in the family for that particular subject. So today, I want to do that with you. I want to have a super uncomfortable conversation with you about your goals and where you're headed in life. And the reason I want to have this conversation is I work with a lot of small business owners. My go-to market is generally somebody that is making between $3 million and $20 million a year of gross revenue in their small business. With that being said, I deal with a lot of driven, ambitious, high CEOs, and I love working with them. But this last year, I really had to have an intense conversation with a couple of them that kept telling me whenever we were doing our goal planning or goal setting, that the whole reason that they did everything that they did in their different lines of work was for their family. And I would say, great, could you articulate a little bit more about that? And they say, yeah, every morning when I get out of bed, I do this for my wife. I do this for my husband. I do this for my kids. And I looked at one of them and I said, is that really true? Is that really true? Is what you're doing every single day in your practice really for the good and the benefit of your family? If your family was not in the picture, would you cease to be as driven and ambitious? Now, would you lack motivation? Absolutely. Would you give up everything and close the doors on your business and never return to work again? Probably not. So we are going to have a real earnest conversation. Most financial advisors, CEOs, and small business owners that I meet, when one of them is in the business and not both the husband and husband, wife or wife in the business, then you have a really significant income disparity. And that creates a lot of head trash and a lot of conversation about one spouse feeling that you're moving further away from them. And I've seen both sides of the camp. I've seen people that want to share all of their goals with their family and tell their spouse, okay, great, I just came back from this business planning. I talked to my coach and I want to do X, Y, and Z next year. And generally, those big audacious goals are so out of place for that spouse hearing them that they either have this sort of like, oh, that's great, honey, please go achieve that. I believe in you. Or they want to start nitpicking at those goals and kind of breaking them down, because they're wondering if you setting these goals is going to bring you further away or closer to them. And the more successful that you become in any profession, the more you have to focus on being centered in your life with the people that you are saying you are doing all of this for. And the reason I keep saying that, the people you say you do all this for, is because oftentimes it's not the action you take to support those people. In fact, the CEO that I was just dealing with, he's like, I do all of this for my family. I do this all so that they can have a better life for themselves and they don't have to go through the struggles that I went through. And I said, okay, great, but why are you writing the job advertisements to hire new employees instead of being at the gymnastics tournament that I know your daughter's in this weekend? And he's like, well, I need to hire new employees so that I can be at events like those. And I said, no, you can be at events like those right now. You're just choosing the company over your family. So you say you're doing all of this for your family, but your actions are reinforcing that you're not. Instead, you're telling your family that your goals and your business are priority number one. And he really wanted to argue with me and say, no, that's not true. I have to do this. And I said, why does it have to be you doing this job advertisement? And he said, because there's no one else to do it. And I said, you hired 70 employees in your organization. You have 70 employees. And you're telling me out of all of those people, one of them cannot write a job advertisement, give you you their best version and you just click approve or deny and then go back and edit it and post it online. And he just kind of dumbfounded looked at me because this is the work that he always did, right? He was an entrepreneur. So he was the one that was answering the door, opening the door, making sure he's pouring coffee for clients. He was doing all the hustle and grind of being a business owner that we've all had to do. But once he achieved a certain level of status, he wasn't changing those habits to be more present in his family's life. In fact, as him and I sat across from each other, I asked him that very question. I said, why are we sitting in this meeting when you still could have been at that gymnastics tournament? Because you skipped in order to write the job advertisement and then followed it up with, oh, and by the way, I've got a meeting with Jamie. There's nothing you and I were crisis solving today that couldn't have waited till tomorrow. So you're telling me that you're doing everything that you do and working 100 hours a week and really, building this great massive enterprise for your family, but your actions are not for your family. They're for yourself and your business. So I want to challenge you this year, every single time you take on some big new goal and you tell yourself, I'm doing this for my family. I'm doing this for them. Everything I do is for my family. To really sit down and ask yourself, is that true? Are you actually doing this for your family? Is your family asking you to achieve these goals? And then that's when we get into really deep conversation around, no, well, they're not asking me to go bring on X amount of households. They're not asking me to complete business merger and acquisitions. They're not asking me to get these new licenses or designations, whatever that big goal is that you have for yourself. But subconsciously, you're telling yourself, if I do that, then it provides a better lifestyle for my family. And they are asking me to do that, to provide a better lifestyle. And I can 100% relate to that because a lot of times my spouse does not ask me to go achieve a certain level of greatness, but does have an expectation that when they swipe that credit card, it continues to work. And so in a lot of financial advisor households, you don't always have two people earning the same amount of income. So you have to have really earnest conversations with your spouse about your goals. As members of the TPR Nation, we're passionate about goal setting and making a plan to achieve goals because goals without plans are just wishes. And so TPR Nation members know that this last month, I spent a lot of time with my family and we talked about goal setting, goal planning. We had to come up with a personal goal, a professional goal, and a monetary goal. What did we want to achieve as a result of our hard work? So my spouse and my son went first and they articulated their goals, and then they asked me to come around and articulate my goals. Now, of course, there's a lot of disparity between my goals and the goals of my 21-year-old son. For example, one of his goals in 2023 was that he only wanted to spend $100 a month on eating out. He felt that he was eating out too much, door dashing too frequently as he worked from home and had all these expenses rise up on him. So he said, you know what? I only want to spend $1,200 a year on eating out, and I'm going to set that as my monetary goal. And that is a perfectly acceptable monetary goal for a 21-year-old. That's appropriate. Now, it might be different where I'm at in my life and setting my monetary goals. So when we articulate those, there's a lot of disparity between us. So as I'm going through my goals and I get done wrapping them up, my son says, great, what do we need to do to support you in achieving all of those? And I was really surprised by the question because it was really insightful because he knows that if my house is out of balance, then my goals are out of balance. They're out of line. I can't go be who I want or need to be for my family if my family is in chaos or if they're unsettled or if there's some kind of conflict within my household. So my son asking that really gave me the opportunity to sit down and say, you know what? I can do all of these things. Here's the goals. Here's how I'm going to set these achievement parameters for myself. And then here are the steps that I'm going to go take. But you're right. If this house is out of balance, I'm going to be derailed from achieving those. So here's what I need from the two of you. And that opened the door for us to have a conversation about what I would need from my house in order for me to go achieve my goals. It really opened the door for us to have earnest conversations about the unpaid household work that goes on. Because I get it. I know how much energy it takes to run a household. I know how much goes into the groceries and the meal prepping and the cleaning. And then we live in the Arctic, so there's a lot of snow removal, plus making sure all the family members are taken care of and that we're participating in birthdays and anniversaries and celebrations throughout the year, regardless of whether or not I'm in surge or in deep focus work. So this conversation facilitated a way that we learned how symbiotic we are with one another. So as I was talking to my son, I said, hey, listen, I can go achieve, boom, this goal this year, but I'm going to be completely derailed if I think every single weekend you're laying in bed watching YouTube or listening to music. I worry a lot about how much time I feel he wastes, and I'm very sensitive to that. So I need to see examples of him being productive, and I need to feel that he is getting out of bed and doing these things. Lane and I spend our energy much different. That means we spend our recovery time much different. And so I need to know that he is recovering and being productive in ways that I don't necessarily see or understand. So I need him to articulate that to me. And when he does, we're in a good place. I'm like, okay, great. You wanted to spend Saturday morning hanging out in bed, watching TV, sleeping in, no problem. But what are you going to do Saturday night? Well, actually, Saturday night, I'm hanging out with my friends, and maybe on Sunday, I'd like to come over and have dinner, family dinner. Now, he is a grown adult. He lives on his own. I don't need his play-by-play of what he's doing every single minute. But the mom in me does worry about his productivity, and it worries about him spending too much time in isolation because he's an introvert. So when we have that dialogue, and he knows that I get derailed from my goals if I don't see him also being productive or getting out and socializing at least one time a week, then he knows that I'm not going to be able to be the warrior I need to be. So when Lane asked me, what do we need to do as a family to support you in achieving those goals? It really allowed this conversation to naturally and organically come up between us that says, hey, listen, I get derailed. I've got all of these ambitions, all of these goals, but I get derailed when the mom in me is worried about your isolation and how introverted you are, because I'm not an introvert necessarily. I don't understand that dynamic. And that gave him the opportunity to say, listen, I spend energy differently than you do. I need a lot more recovery time than you do. And here's what I can show you to make sure that you know I'm being productive, but that you don't have to worry quite as much. So we were able to facilitate that conversation. And just like with my spouse, I was able to say, hey, listen, here's this next year. Here's what I'm road mapping out. This does mean I've got about 6 business trips planned between here and here. And I want to make sure that's okay with you. I want to make sure that I'm checking in. Are there any trips that you want to accompany me on? Are there any activities you want to go participate in a particular region of the area that I'm at? Or would you like to stay home? Because my spouse has goals too, and they want to become a better BMX rider in the upcoming year. And so being able to articulate of saying, hey, listen, I've got this business conference down in Phoenix. Would you like to hire a BMX coach? And we both go. You go do your coaching with them. I go do my coaching on the business side. And then we get back together and maybe spend a day or two kind of rehashing the experiences that we both had. So can we do things differently that connect us and bring us back together? And can we be intentional about that planning? Because the worst thing in the world is me packing up my bags and my spouse going, hold on, I didn't know you were going. What trip is this for again? How long are you going to be gone? So I'm left to do everything in the house. And so that also means I have to be conscientious to the ways that I provide for the household that my spouse does not. I do all of the cooking in our house, 100% of it. And so being able to look at it and say, hey, listen, I'm going to be gone for these 5 days. What can I do to help you? Let's make sure we get groceries that you know how to cook independently. Should I hire and get some meals that you can just throw in the oven? What needs to happen? Now, most of the time, my spouse will not look at me and say, no, I need you to meal prep and have all these casseroles and get ready for their business trip. Instead, it's a check-in to say, no, I've got this. I can do this by myself. Thank you for checking in. Thank you for making sure that my needs are taken care of and not just yours. If everything I do is for the betterment of my family, then I have to put my family first in everything that I'm doing. So when I'm business trip planning and I'm setting out my goals, I want to make sure my family is involved in that process. Now, the number one rule of goal setting is that you cannot set somebody else's goals for them. So there's a reason that I let my son and my spouse go first, is so that they can see me listening to their goals and asking those questions like Lane did. How do I help you achieve these? And what do we need to do this next 90 days to help you to achieve that particular goal by the end of the year? And then when it is my turn to goal set, I'm expecting that same amount of courtesy, that they're not questioning me on my goals. They're saying, great, how do we support you in this endeavor? Now, it is appropriate for my spouse and my family to look at me and say, okay, when you achieve that goal, then what, right? What happens in our lifestyle? Because if we are achieving these monumentous goals, they need to have some type of consequence or benefits for our family. And so we sit down, especially when with my spouse and I, and we're going over our financial plan together, and we say, great, here's what we're going to go do in this next year. Here's what we were able to achieve last year. And this is what it means. We're going to add this much more money to our savings. We're going to upgrade our vacations to this lifestyle. We're going to take on this many coaches and learn a new skill set. So they need to know how they are impacted by the goals that you are setting as a family. They need to feel a part of those achievements and those celebrations so that when we are going over this, my spouse and I go over finances and goals almost every Saturday. It's something that we just do as we're sipping coffee about like, hey, are we on track? Where are we at? Is there anything coming up that either one of us needed to know about? And then at that 90-day, we do a complete review and say, okay, this is what we said we were going to do. This is what we did. This is our setback, right? This is what we weren't anticipating. For example, we had a big blizzard, wasn't anticipating 5 feet of snow. So we had to take a little money out of our house savings in order to get the snow removed and hauled off to a different area because in our neighborhood, all the snow came into our yard. So we had 10 to 11 feet of snow in our yard. So we have those conversations and say, hey, listen, do we get a little derailed? Did we have to take this out of savings? Did we have to reallocate these funds? Do we need to replenish those pots of money for this unexpected expense? Now, if your spouse is anything like mine, they do not want to know about the finances. They do not care about them. They want to make sure that the credit card works and the light switches turn the lights on and there's food in the fridge when they open it. But that does not mean I stop having these conversations. We continually have these conversations so that I never, ever, ever hear about how I kept somebody out of the finances and they don't know what's going on. And as a financial advisor, I have sat with dozens and dozens of clients in which the meeting turns into more marriage counseling than it does financial planning, as we talk about the emotions around money and how one spouse feels very disconnected from the other when it comes to the finances. There's only 2 couples I have ever met with in my lifetime that shared the exact same feelings and emotions around money and were married together. Most of the time, most of us are married or in a relationship with somebody who has a completely different experience around money than we do. And that doesn't mean that they're not high income earners. That doesn't mean they're not achievers. That doesn't mean they're not savers. It just means the value and the emotion that they're putting around money is much different than our own. For my spouse, watching her parents, because financial lessons are caught, not taught, right? No matter how many finance books you read, all those financial lessons you learn about money in life are going to be caught by watching the people that are closest to you have experiences around money. So in my spouse's household, money was a tool of manipulation. It was something that one had and held over the other person in that marriage. And so watching her parents growing up constantly fighting about who spent what and having an experience where if her father spent $100, then the mom was equally allowed to go out and spend $100 themselves. And so it became this push-pull relationship around money and fairness. So in my household, my spouse has a lot of emotional baggage about money. There's a lot of sensitivity around it. There's a lot of feeling that they have to work in order to take care of themselves because money is a tool of manipulation. And conversely, my feelings around money are much, much different. My feelings around money, even though I'm a financial advisor and money is my entire existence, everything I do involves emotions and money and teams and building and organizations and companies coming together to achieve something. It all comes back to money. But my views and my feelings towards money are very dispassionate in the sense that I believe that as long as there's blood coursing through my veins and oxygen in my lungs and thoughts in my head, then I have a capacity to go earn more money. And I will always go earn more money. And so I always try to have a very dispassionate feeling towards money itself. And the reason is because I have seen money conversations tear apart a lot of families, a lot of businesses, and break apart a lot of marriages. And for me, love is triumphant over money. It doesn't matter. The money conversation has to be something that you are able to sit down and talk with your family. It is not worth losing a part of your soul and a part of your life and a part of your family over money. Am I a diehard capitalist? You bet your bottom dollar that I am. And do I really appreciate money as an exchange of value and the way that we measure things in economic standards? 100%. I'm 100% about that. But in my world, in my life, money will not come before friends, family, and loved ones. And this becomes one of my favorite conversation starter topics is I love to ask somebody that I just met, tell me about your first experience with money. Because a lot of times we'll find out their emotional values values and the priority that they set on the work they do and the money that they have around that first experience around money. Ask yourself this question first. What is your first experience around money? Was it when you got your first job? Did you mow lawns? Did you watch kids? Did your parents make you tithe that money or take a percentage of it? Or were you allowed to keep all of it and spend it? Money is emotional. And so when we find out what our root emotions are the first time we have an experience around money, we can normally tell a lot of values and a lot of ways that people treat their finances today from those very first childhood lessons. And if we're telling ourselves as business owners, as entrepreneurs, as high achievers, that everything we do is for our family, then we have to check in with our family and bringing them into the fold, doing the planning with them, doing the goal setting with them is an important part of that advancement. And schedule out your check-ins on goals. We do them every single quarter. So maybe you make it over Sunday night dinner. Maybe you do a fun experience where everyone gets Saturday and you go to a water park, and then that afternoon at luncheon, you do a goal check-in. You get your family together, you pay for the experience, and you do the goal check-in to make sure that they know how committed you are to watching them achieve their goals. And you will see how reciprocal that energy is. If you work with your family, your spouse, and your kids, and you set these goals, you make a plan, you help them achieve them, and you're checking in quarterly about them, you will be overwhelmed with the response that you get from your family doing the same for you, because lessons like this are caught and not taught. They have to watch you walk the walk and talk the talk. We cannot, as financial advisors, give so much of our energy and our passion and our planning to every single client that we come in interaction with and have 0% left over for our family. We have to take these strategies and these steps that we all learn through listening to podcasts like this, to going to business development, to becoming a member of the TPR Nation, and we have to apply them in our own household. Because if we do not, then we are not really living by the value of saying that everything we do for our family. And then you've got to schedule in family updates. And you can do this in a myriad of ways, depending on how big your family is. Maybe your family's just you and your spouse. Maybe you're expecting a kid. Maybe you have one kid. Maybe you have 12 kids. And there's really not a lot of time to do extra things like goal setting and goal planning, which makes it even more important that you find the time. Time is the greatest equalizer in the entire world. We are not all born in the same countries. We're not all born in the same classes. We are not all born with the same economic backgrounds, but we are all born with the same amount of time. Saying you do not have time to do this with your family is living against the value of saying that everything you do is for your family. And you have to ask yourself that constantly to make sure that you are living a life that is as genuine as you want it to be. And you are in control of that. You get to sit down. You get to decide. You get to bring in the people that you love the most into your fold and make sure that you're achieving these. So if everything you do is for your family, then you're going to do goal setting with them. You're going to do planning, and then you're going to have check-ins. I check in with my spouse every single week when I pay bills on Saturday. We sit down and kind of go over where we're at, and that's just a pulse point. That's a 10-minute conversation over coffee. But then once a quarter, we want to look back and we want to say, hey, what did we achieve? What did we do? Because we bring our son into this fold as well, then we do steak and French fry night. And I cut the check for that. And I listen to them go first. And they tell me all about what they've done, where they've fallen off the rails, and they get support and advice from each of us as we go through where we're at with those steps. And then I go last and I give them the highlights. I give them the things that I've struggled with. I unpack the head trash. We go through where I might have erred or gone wrong, and I listen to their insight. So often people, especially in households where you have one person as that business owner and the other one is not, we get a lot of input from our spouses that see only a slice of the pie. They don't see the bigger picture. And if they do not see the bigger picture, it is because you, my dear artist, have not painted it for them. You had the responsibility to show them what that bigger picture really is. One of the ways that I've seen a business owner do this super successfully is that he sends out a Monday morning agenda to his wife via email. He has his executive assistant type up all the bullet points of where he's supposed to be this week, if he's in town, out of town, what meetings, what dinners, what luncheons, etc. And then the highlights and the goals of what those meetings are for. So his executive assistant gets that all prepared in his draft email every Friday night. So Monday morning he logs in. It's the first email he checks. And then he goes in and finesses it. And when he finesses it, he adds in a quote or a love poem or something sweet and personalizes the message and sends it out to his wife via email. Now, this is just his way of checking in with his wife and making sure that she's aware of everything that he has going on. Because oftentimes, when you have somebody that's very, very busy in work and somebody that's very, very busy at home, you can feel like two ships passing in the night and not really connecting. You can feel like you're going separate directions. And if that's the case, it is up to you to be the pilot to get you back on the same track and to adjust the flight plan so that you guys are flying in unison. You need to have these regular check-ins. Now, if an email's too cold, then don't make an email. Make it Sunday night dinner. Whatever it is that allows your spouse to feel like you're not leaving them behind in your pursuit of greatness, you need to do that. And here's a great theory. Ask them, hey, listen, I've got a lot of things going on. There's a lot in my mind. Sometimes I think you're already aware of things, or I think I've already told you, but you're not. So what is the best format that you want to receive that information? Should we talk about it over dinner? Maybe we spend 10 or 15 minutes and I just kind of give you the highlights of the day or the week or what's happening this quarter. Is an email kind of cold and insensitive? What do you think is best? Do you just need access to my calendar to see where I am and what I'm doing? What are those things that your spouse might need from you in order for them to feel like you're not leaving them behind and you guys are flying in tandem? And then you need to have an up periscope meeting. Up periscope means the submarines come to the surface, they put the periscope up, they just make sure that they're on course. And you need to be checking in with your family, every single member, to have those up periscope meetings, to have those uncomfortable conversations, not to pick a fight, not to hear about all the things that you did wrong, but instead to make a plan to do things right the next day. We always have tomorrow. So having these healthy conversations, having this dialogue with your spouse, with your kids, with the people that matter most in your life is very critical to long-term success. But you also have to set the rules of engagement. You've got to set the boundaries. And, I mentioned, does your spouse need access to your calendar? Where does that go wrong? Where does your spouse maybe think that you have more time on your calendar than you actually do? One of the things, the boundary that I had to set with my own was that when they had access to my calendar and saw a break of time, they said, hey, great, can you come outside and take out the trash? Can you go do these things? Well, no, I can't because I'm in deep focus work right now. And even though I'm no longer in a meeting, whatever I said in that meeting that I was going to get done, now I actually have to have the time to go and do the thing I said I was going to do. And I don't play office. I don't pretend to create work to look like I'm busy to get out of household chores or participating with my family, because that is not living in my truth. That is not doing everything I do for them. Instead, that is quite the opposite. That is making up reasons to avoid your family. So when my door is shut, when I am doing my work, when I am focused and I'm practicing those deep focus exercises of getting done, my family knows I'm being intentional about the work time so that I can be intentional and present about our family time and when I'm together. So every single day, my spouse knows when my day is going to wrap up and what my plans are. Sometimes this drives them a little bit nuts, but on the days that I don't tell them, then I get a lot of whiplash about, I have to wait around for you, I never know when you're working, etc. So instead, I just facilitate the dialogue and I say, hey, listen, this is the hours that I'm working today. I'll be wrapped up around this. It's pretty steady and consistent unless I have a couple of one-off business dinners or business meetings, networking events, etc. So there's always that facilitated dialogue so that we're working in unison. And then I do something completely radical. I ask them what is on their agenda, what is on their plan. Is there something that I needed to do to facilitate help in the household? And then I am conscientious about the work that I outsource versus the work that I do myself, because there are sometimes emotional things that people need to see you do to feel that you're being being an active member of the household and not just outsourcing everything. In 2022, I hired a household manager, and that is somebody to come in and to make sure the house is running efficiently. They do the cleaning, they do the stocking of groceries and supplies, and they do a lot of preparation work like organizing lawn care services, tree cutting, snow blowing, etc. for the house so that I can focus on the work that I need to get done. And I thought this was a great resource. My spouse truly enjoys it as well. And so this Christmas, I said to my household manager, I'll put sticky notes on all the presents that need to be wrapped. Could you please make sure that these get wrapped? And my spouse interfered and said, absolutely not. You are not buying a gift for somebody and having somebody else wrap it. That is completely insincere. When you purchase a gift for someone, you have to wrap it yourself. And that was a real value rub for them. For me, in my mind, complete waste of my time to put paper. Actually, wrapping presents is a first world problem. Like, to put paper on something that we only momentarily use and then throw in the trash drives me nuts. But to my spouse, it was very important that I be the person that wraps the gifts so that somebody has them to open. Otherwise, it was completely insincere. So as you're planning for world domination, as you're setting up your life so that you can be always at your highest and best use and most effective, what areas can you outsource? If you don't already have a virtual assistant or an executive assistant, could you get those in place? Does your spouse need help around the household? Could you bring in a household manager? If neither one of you enjoys cooking, do we bring in private chefs? This is something I shared with you that we do during our surge, is that a couple of nights a week when I'm just absolutely exhausted from the surges, I make sure that the meal preparation is done ahead of time. So it's not just one more thing on my plate. But it's really important as you look at all of these areas of your life on how you can be constantly more efficient and more effective. And let's face it, what we're doing is buying back our time. In our early 20s, we spent a lot of time trying to chase money. And then in our 30s and 40s, that kind of switches and we spend a little bit more money buying back the time that we can spend doing other things. We outsource a lot of our life, and outsourcing a lot of our life is okay. We're doing that in a lot of different ways already. For example, hopefully, as you listen to this, you're wearing clothes, but you probably didn't make those clothes. You outsource that to somebody else. You outsource the milk and the eggs and the electricity. And so we're already in a mode of outsourcing in the first world country that we live in. So as you look at your life and you say, hey, what are the areas where I'm not at my highest and best use? And maybe I can outsource and bring in other professionals that want to earn a living in those capacities to free up my time, to buy back my time, but not outsource so much of your life that you're having a value rub with your family members. There are going to be things that are just really important to your family that you are the one that takes care of them. And in your mind, they might be super minuscule. They might be things that you're like, this is a complete waste of my time. I don't know why I'm the one having to do this. But to the rest of your family, it is what they need to see you do to reinforce that you're still grounded, you're still connected, and you're still an active member of the household. So have that dialogue with your kids. Have that dialogue with your spouse. See what people need from you so that they can be at their highest and best self and you can be at your highest and best self. And then when you are called upon by your family to complete those tasks, do not do them grudgingly. Do not do them with an attitude or constantly reminding them how your time would be much better spent doing something else. Because if you say you are doing this for your family, then everything you do has to actually be for your family. And that means listening to what is most important to them and showing up for those occasions. Like, you don't have to write a job description for every single position in your firm, but you do have to show up for your daughter's gymnastics practice. You cannot say your family comes first and then choose to put them last. Goal set with your family. Bring everyone into the fold, everyone into the conversation. If you are the driver of your family who does this, then you go last. You listen, you help, you plan, and then that respect you have shown other members of your family will be reciprocated as you begin to set out your own plans. And you'll watch your family rally around to make sure that you are able to achieve everything that you want to. But you also have to have those family updates. We talked a lot about this in this podcast, that you need to be connecting with your family in what other fashion that they feel is most appropriate in order to get the feedback to know you're on track for everyone to achieve their goals. And every now and then, have an up Periscope meeting. Where are we at as a couple, as a family? Are we still connected? Are we still making sure our values are aligned? Where are we at and where we're going? And it's okay for two people to have different objectives and different career paths and different goals and different hobbies. That doesn't mean you're going different directions. You only go different directions when you no longer choose to make the effort to connect with that person. When you deliberately cut them out of your life because you are choosing not to share with them the details of what is going on in your life and what is important. We wouldn't run our business organizations this way. We wouldn't run our team this way. And therefore, we cannot run our families this way. We cannot, as financial advisors, be hands off when it comes to goal setting and planning and working towards achievement within our own family. Okay, TPR Nation, you know that this podcast and everything that we do at The Perfect RIA is 100% about actionable items you can take to radically transform your life, your practice, and deliver more value to your clients. So let's go over what we just rehashed on this podcast. Number one, really ask yourself, is everything that you're doing actually for the benefit of your family? Are you really putting them first in really intentional ways? Are your actions showing that? And are you bringing your family into the fold? Action item number two, if you have not already done goal planning and goal setting with all of your family members, do it. Do it as a vision board. Do it as a conversation. Do it at a restaurant. Do some fun activity together and then come together and set up goals, listen to those goals, and then develop a plan. Don't treat your kids like you are giving them a test that they're going to fail. Don't have your kids say his goal is X, Y, and Z, and then you go, great, what's your plan to get there? Well, what about this? What about that? Don't start poking holes in your kid's plan. Be excited for them and then ask them those questions. It's okay to ask, what are you going to do to get there? But help guide that, help facilitate it the same way you would with a client in a conference room, because we do this all of the time when we are goal setting. Treat your kids and your spouse better than you would treat your very top client. Have a conversation about family updates and whether or not you guys feel you're going two separate directions. It's okay to have independent hobbies. It's okay to do things differently than one another as long as you're coming back together. Those differences are most likely what attracted you to one another in the first place. So you don't have to become a replica of your spouse. Instead, you could say, great, you go to cycling and I'm going to go do jiu-jitsu, and I would love to talk to you about afterwards what we learned and what challenges we face. Have those up Periscope meetings. Make sure you're checking in with your kids. Make sure you're checking in with your family members, with your spouse, and saying, where are we at? Where are we at in this relationship? Are we still value aligned? And what do we need to do to maybe get ourselves back on track? Have the difficult conversations today so that all of your tomorrows are filled with the exact life that you want to build for you and your family. All right, TPR Nation, this is Jamie Shalansky in an episode of Worlds to Conquer. Go find people who share your values and change the world.
Hold on before we go. Something that you need to know. This isn't tax, legal, or investment advice. That isn't our intent. Information designed to change lives. Financial planning can make you thrive. Start today, don't think twice. Be a better husband, father, mother, and wife.